have a quorum. So, and I know Harriet's on her way and Mike is unable to attend and Olaf is unable to attend. Mike's on his way to Texas for the getting ready for the birth of his granddaughter. So I will therefore call to order the July meeting of the Eastham Energy and Climate Action Committee. This meeting will be video recorded and broadcast over local access channel 8 and through the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. So I'm going to, before we hit introductions, I just want to give an interesting quote that I had heard, and we'll talk more about this kind of stuff soon. John Holdman, who's a professor at Harvard and president's science advisor back a couple of administrations ago, said, "We basically have three choices: mitigation, adaptation, and suffering. We're going to do some of each of these. The question is what the mix is going to be." An interesting quote. So anyway, with that, we'll go around the room real quickly. I'm Tom McNellis.
Roberta Longley.
John Blaney.
Eleni Carr.
Gary Senecal, volunteer.
Okay, online. We've got Gwyneth.
Gwyneth.
Hi, I'm Gwyneth. I'm from the recycling committee and working with Gary on solid waste issues.
And going around the horn there, Jack.
Jack Hadley, volunteer.
And Cheryl.
Cheryl Gale, volunteer.
And Shana.
Shana Brogan with the town of Eastham.
Thank you all for joining us. We're going to rearrange things just a tad since Gwyneth has a commitment and has a part of our meeting today. But before we do that, any other public comment? Hearing none. Let's do, Shana, do you want to do your updates first and then we'll go over to Gwyneth?
Sure. So I guess starting with the One Cape Conference, I think we're all set there. You have your budget that was approved by Rich and Jackie. And I think the cost is like $150 a ticket for town staff or something like that. So I think we can go through the government rate, and so that should be fine. I don't know when the tickets go on sale though. So if you knew about it sooner than I did, so if you hear about it, just let me know and I think we could just place the order through the town.
Excellent.
And
Thank
then for the decarbonization roadmap, I reached out to staff a few times about, I sent them the roadmap to review and get any thoughts and comments they had. And then I kind of tried to set up a meeting with, DPW and whatnot and climate action to review it and kind of go over comments and questions about it. But I wasn't successful on that route. So I think what I'm going to do is just put together a list of questions and send them out to the different departments to provide whatever their response is. And then kind of go from there as to what their edits look like for the plan. And then send them all back to the consultant. And that's pretty much where I'm at. They did have a lot of questions about the town buildings, so I started putting together this sort of chronological order of all of the different upgrades that the different HVAC and roof systems have gone through for all the buildings that they've been asking about.
When is the decarb roadmap due back to the state?
There's no timeline on it, so I just let them know that we were trying to organize a meeting in the next couple of weeks right after 4th of July, but they didn't say to have their response back with any period.
Do you think the meeting would be with John or would that be with he had appointed a liaison with us, would that be with one of his reps?
I think at this point, I just, given that they gave us this report a couple of months ago, I think it was like mid-May. I think at this point, it would just be good to get their, responses on the information specifically that the consultant is looking for, rather than have a meeting. And if there's information that the consultant needs that we still don't have, maybe, or clarifications that they need, maybe scheduling a meeting at that point. But right now, it seems like they're looking for a lot of information on the systems of each of the buildings. So I've been going through and looking at the purchase orders and when we did it and what systems are in place and all of that, to try to answer those questions and get confirmation from those departments.
Shana, do you think it might be helpful at all to share with them that we are really striving for a goal of finalizing this report and being able to include it in our application to become a climate leader, which may lead to some funds? Just let them know that we have a deadline of the end of the year. Do you think that would help move things on a little bit if there was just, a little nudge to know that we're on a timeline?
Yeah, I think I alluded to the fact that we were trying to put the plan together for 2050, decarbonization and the funding part, but I don't know if I put on the timeline. But yeah, I mean, we could let them know that it's kind of time sensitive, and hopefully at least getting their responses back, to the data that we're looking for. Absolutely.
Can we maybe accelerate that even more and let them know we have a select board meeting coming up in September, and we really want to get this flushed out. I think we've done a lot of the work. The stationary working group helped and have done a really good job of perhaps doing some of the initial nitty-gritty heavy lifting. And then it really takes a little bit of finesse and insight from from the town staff to really put the final polishing touches on it. And we'd like to get their inputs before we send it back,
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yep, I can include that as well. So that they're
Sometimes,
aware.
just even if there's superficial deadlines, sometimes people respond to that.
Yeah, definitely.
I know
Thank
I
you.
do, so.
Okay, so let's see. In terms of the EV chargers and the green communities, I went back and looked, and it looks like the last meeting that was had with Rich was on May 1st. So I think scheduling a meeting with him again to go over, next steps on the EV chargers, communities, and also the solar inventory, wherever that leads tonight, and giving him an update on all those things, maybe in mid-August. So it'd be before the select board meeting in September, and maybe getting an update from him on that, because I don't have an update on the EV chargers at this point. Only just the email that Tom had sent me.
Yeah, evidently the group had come and done a layout, and the layout showed the charging stations back by the ball field instead of in the front, which is what we did initially when we did the walkthrough with Rich and Rivermore Energy. And I said, well, Rich, it looks okay to me, other than the fact that it's in the back. If that's okay with you, I said, hopefully they discussed it with you. And he said, no, they hadn't. So he was going to push back on them and say he'd rather have it in the front, because he doesn't know if that rearrangement could really be done in the back, because it requires moving the Connex box and doing a whole bunch of stuff back there.
Okay,
So
good.
Yeah, maybe you could double check with Rich when you see him, because if he wants me to go back, excuse me, to Rivermore, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, yeah, he wasn't in the office today, but yes, as soon as I see him next, I'll see where that stands. I think that's
Dana,
what I have.
One more question for you.
Mhm.
Where do we stand with the ZEV policy draft?
I think that was gonna go on the wasn't the plan to put it on the September agenda with the select board?
So
kind of-
in other words, you all have looked at it and you're more or less fine with it, is what you're saying? That
Yeah, I mean, I mean, there's only so much we could
right,
change with
exactly.
it.
Right,
Yeah.
but I knew that you were circulating it, and so I wanted to know if that's been circulated and that you're saying that whatever we have come up with at this point is the product,
Yes.
basically. Okay.
Yeah.
Including the new sentence in there to reflect the schools.
Well, I think that was to be determined, right? You were determining whether or not the school was gonna be included with green communities and how that all.
And yeah, and the latest, I know there's been a lot of emails back and forth. I can resend that if it kind of got buried, but yeah, I talked to Lisa Sullivan, who said it needs to be in there just in case the schools take advantage of some Eastham purchases in the future. I talked to the school and the business office there confirmed that they have no town vehicles at the moment. So there's a new sentence in there that I added in the latest version that I recommended that basically said, and you'll see it in the meeting in the chair's report, that said this covers town vehicles, town-owned vehicles, and any future vehicles purchased for the school.
Okay, and were they okay with that? I remember your email. I just don't remember if they ever gave
Well, I
any
wanted
sort
to
of.
get your confirmation first before sending it to them, and I figured it would probably be more impactful if that request came from the town to say we'd
Okay.
like the schools to sign off, because the superintendent should sign off on that.
Yep, okay, that's fine. That makes sense. All right, I'll figure out if it should come from me or Jackie or Rich and send that off to them before too long, soon.
Yeah, and plus the complication there is that there's a new superintendent.
Okay. Well, hopefully that doesn't delay things. I mean.
Yeah, hopefully.
It's just one sentence. I mean,
Yeah, it isn't a big deal.
Yeah.
It's just gotta be in there. Yeah.
yeah,
So I assume you need that signature first before you give it over to Jackie for signature.
yeah. Yeah, we
Okay.
want to make sure that they're okay with it and they're aware of it.
Right, because ultimately, they both have to write a short paragraph for the application to the climate designation application. So. Yeah,
And of course, remembering that this opens up the possibility for about $1 million in grants for future building upgrades. So it's not just the cool thing about having climate leader designation. It's opening up a much larger set of grant opportunities.
Okay. I will make note of that in my request. To them, so
Speaking
that
of-
they-
But I can't remember, does this light mean it's muted or it's on? Can you all hear me okay? Is this better or is that better?
Sounds the
First-
same.
Okay, so the light needs to be on, all right. Any word on the fire department HVAC closeout? I
No,
talked to Laura Selmer a couple weeks ago and she said they're waiting on one final sign off to get the whole thing balanced. So I can poke Laura again, see what's up. She didn't seem to be in a panic, which kind of bothered me because she's like, well, we got plenty of time before we apply for the next grant, which is in the fall. It's like, well, we'd like to get this thing closed out.
right.
Okay.
Okay, and if Rich is in tomorrow, I can ask him.
Okay. Okay. And then another topic that's gonna come up again later in the meeting is our web updates with Kayla, the web page updates. We have some stuff that's still hanging on, and then there's gonna be some new stuff that we request for
Okay.
the CAP workshop.
Okay, yeah, I sent Kayla the flyer for the workshop. And asked her to post it on the Facebook page and the town website.
Great, great.
So I think I asked her to put it, I can't remember if I asked her for this week or next week. I think this week. So, and she said she'd post it, but
Great.
any
Could you
other
also-
requests you have, if you want to bundle them together, I can send them off to her.
Okay, will do.
And if there's old requests that you have, you can put those with it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the front page, the landing page of the committee website has all those great bulletin style things that Kayla had set up for us, but they're now up to a year plus old in terms of what's on there. Those need to be cleaned, and that new cap thing should be on there. Right, and then there is some fixes in the structure, the lower level structures of the page. So we can refresh that, get that over to you.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. All right. Really good stuff going on, so appreciate all that, Shane, thank you. Gwendolyn is doing some amazing work with the recycling committee and composting, and really impressed with the Gwendolyn, you're grabbing of Gwyneth rather, you're grabbing of an idea from the farmer's market. Someone came by who was in the
Not
housing.
green, Nauset Green?
Yes, Nauset Green, the income qualified housing up there. And she said, it'd be great if I could bring my compost. And if I could collect it and drop it off. I can't get into the transfer station because it requires a permit, or I have to pay $10 to get in there. Evidently at Nauset Green, they have their own garbage pickup, but not compost. And so Gwyneth successfully got the town to move really fast on getting a compost pickup at the farmer's market, and the farmer's market has gotten progressively more popular. I understand last week was awesome. So Gwyneth, I'll turn it over to you. I know you were going to talk a little bit about the work on the solid waste working group and other stuff that's going on there.
Sure. I mean, so I guess part of why I'm here is because we'd like to kind of combine efforts on some of the things that the Energy Climate Action Committee is doing in terms of communication, with some of what the Recycling Committee is doing with communication along with solid waste, because a lot of it's very overlapping and we can definitely share resources. So I don't know if Gary had some of the newsletters I've created for the Recycling Committee over the past few months. And I've been working on a brochure about composting in Eastham. I still need some final feedback from Kim, but she's out this week before I make copies. But I've got the draft ones, and I took a few of the draft ones to the farmer's market, and they got gobbled up. People were so excited to talk about composting. Wow. I mean, it was, I sent out a little review of all the different people that I talked to who came by. Mira set me up on part of the town table, and I had the compost bin right next to me. And just even people from out of town wanted to talk about how they compost in their town. And it was just, this one guy came by and he said, "Oh, you mean I'm not supposed to put my clothes in the trash when they're too worn out and I can't give them away?" And I'm like, "No, really, it's kind of against the law in Massachusetts now. You have to put them in the textile bin at the transfer station." He's like, "Okay, I'm going to go home and get them out of the trash." Okay. But people were, what I got from it is people were really excited to talk about what they do and to learn new things. Someone said, "Well, I can't do it because this." I'm like, "Well, have you thought about doing this instead?" Just every little tiny bit, not to try to shame them and tell them they're not doing enough, but like give them hints on, hey, if that's become a problem, maybe someone said, put a yogurt container with one of the compostable bags in your freezer. Tom, your wife said there's no room in the freezer, but so it was so much fun. And so I've created a bunch of these. I've created some signs to put up on the recycling bulletin board by the recycling area at the transfer station. Again, I want Kim to approve before I put it up, so I'm waiting for her to come back. But anything anything we can do to help each other, I think we should be doing. I mean, certainly composting is a big one that is part of the climate action. I mean, pretty much anything we can keep out of the solid waste stream and burning is good. Plastic, any of it is good to do. So whatever I can do to help, whatever we can share resources on. One of the things, Shana, goes back to what Tom was saying about the website is I'm having a lot of trouble. Kim can put one newsletter at a time up there, but I'd like to have all our newsletters there, like Council on Aging has. I've created a composting flyer that I'm asking Mira to send out on the town, whatever she's going to do about the farmers market, whether it's an e-blast or Facebook or whatever on the town social media stuff. But one of the things I was thinking was if the town, I think it's Constant Contact that the town uses, for if there was a way we could get one blast about signing up for an email list for either one of the groups, or we combine an email list for the two groups, and then whether we run our own MailChimp on our own or something. I'm not sure what you guys are doing right now. I think that we would reach a lot more people. I mean, Facebook is great, but I think we need the e-blast to get people to sign up for further updates.
Yeah, we've been collecting folks who voluntarily want to get on our email list.
Yeah.
The town has their own list, of course,
Right.
and
Right.
keeps that private, of course.
Yeah, and so I'm not asking the town to share it. What I'm asking is the town can send out a blast saying, here's this other list to sign up on if you're interested in the climate action, recycling, sustainability efforts that the town is putting out.
Yeah, and I think the COA would also be willing to do that. They have another
That's a good
their own
idea.
extensive list.
Yeah.
And I think if this committee, agreed, we could send out an email on our list, maybe even include it in the next bulletin coming up, with the sign up for the recycling.
Well, so my question was actually bigger than that. Would it be, do you think it would be, do you think it would be possible for us to combine lists? Or do you think people who signed up for your list would be upset about getting information from the recycling committee? That was the kind of the big question.
I mean, personally, I would be delighted to get, as an interested person, if I'm interested in climate action, I'm interested in composting and waste and how to best, what can I do to help? So that's my personal opinion. I mean, so I actually think it's okay, or maybe we could even do something like make an announcement in the Way, which by the way is amazing. I loved it. Make some sort of like announcement that, we're partnering with the composting and recycling committee, because these things are aligned, and we will be sharing communications from both committees using this resource or sharing the list. You can opt out if you want.
Yeah, give people the option to opt out.
And no one's gonna opt out, right? So.
I've only gotten a few opt-outs. Most people were asking to sign up, which was
That's right.
confusion, but at least that showed that they were getting emails.
My hunch is that most people, we get all sorts of stuff. I mean, look at what happens in the world, right? You say iPhone, all of a sudden, your whole feed is like new phones. So there's a lot of sharing that goes on. I think this is in the right spirit. We're not selling anything. We're just sharing information.
Are you running your list currently as just Excel sheet or a list, or are you using MailChimp or? Yeah.
It's an Excel sheet.
Okay.
I hesitate to give MailChimp emails because they market them. So, although we've been, John did an amazing job of figuring out how to use the MailChimp tool to create the, a complex HTML-based email. We did not give them any of our email list. So I think we need to be careful, not only not spamming people with too many emails, but, we let this committee decide what gets sent out. So we're a little cautious on that. I guess my preference would be to encourage people, advertise your sign up through one of our newsletters and talk a little bit about why that's so important, why solid waste is a big component of the our problem.
So you're saying keep them separate?
That would be my vote.
I just wanted to confirm what I think I carried.
Yeah, that'd be my vote.
And there's
Do
also.
you have a thought, Harriet?
This too. Pardon?
Do you have a thought about it?
Well, I agree with your initial reaction that I don't think, it's not like people are getting emails 3 or 4 times a week. So how often were we talking, like once a month or once every couple of months or something like that? So it's not like you're getting deluged. I mean, we all get deluged with emails, but I think, if you're on the, under this umbrella, you're under the climate umbrella, then I think you're gonna be, receptive to information about other environmental considerations. And so when they give them the opportunity to opt, if you don't want to get this anymore, just let us opt out. Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm just thinking from the standpoint of the privacy issue, because we've been cautioned that in some cases we shouldn't be collecting emails, but we have as a voluntary thing, if you want to be on the climate list.
We've
for
always
your email
asked
service.
people if they want to be on
Yeah,
our list. And
yeah.
Yes, and we haven't assumed that because they attended a meeting that.
Right.
So I think it's perfectly acceptable if the committee wants to send something out for the recycling committee and encourage that. I guess I would just hesitate of taking our 250 emails and handing it to you.
No, I wasn't asking for it to be handed to me. I was asking for you to maintain control, and then I would send you the thing to send out to your list. I was not asking to take your names from you. I might give you mine just because there's only 20 people on it, and you probably know all of them.
And you deserve a bigger distribution than that for sure.
But before we asked the town if they could send a blast, I wanted to set this, whatever you decide is fine, but I wanted to set that up before we ask the town to do some kind of blast about joining some of these email lists. If the town can do that, I don't know. Like you said,
And
there's
Shana,
issues.
yeah, Shana,
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I mean, I guess if you're not sharing the emails, that's okay. And if you're sort of, as long as like the Climate Action Committee is not like sending out information as the recycling committee, I think if there's an email, like if you want to encourage people on the climate action list to sign up for an email newsletter to receive that from the recycling committee, I feel like that's a good start and see how that goes. And I think it sounds great to send something out like through the town to say, if you're interested in these newsletters through the recycling committee, climate action committee, and maybe there's another one we can think of, then people could, because I think we're working on the open space and recreation plan, and one of our questions was how would you prefer to receive information from the town? And overwhelmingly people wanted to receive email newsletters. So
Right.
I think it would be a great step to take to get information out there.
And that's what's frustrating, is that people really want to hear it, but I only have 20 people by email, not Facebook, and I only have 20 people that I'm not getting where. So I think that what I'm hearing, kind of the overall thing, is let's keep our list separate, but let's definitely share and point, and when we send a blast every so often, hey, by the way, there's another list. And then if we can coordinate in something to have the town send something out to sign up, people to sign up for both, or even add the open space. I don't know if that's something.
And Shana, did I hear you say that maybe the town could send out an email as the town to say, here are these committees?
Right.
And then if you want to get information from these committees, here's how you do that. Because that would be so helpful.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
what I think it.
Yeah, that's what I've been pushing for.
Yeah, that would be great. And Tom, I ask you, so the outreach that we're doing for the climate action plan and what have you, and there are flyers. either, does it exist now, or could we have another flyer if you went to get on, or do people automatically get on our mailing list when they go to one of
gonna get
these
to that.
meetings? So just as we're capturing them and they're coming, and then we can get them on our email list. Wonderful.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that shortly. So
Okay,
good.
all right, okay.
Good straight person for leading into the,
Okay,
to that
all right,
topic.
perfect.
Perfect. All right.
So I think
Thanks,
that,
Gwyneth.
yeah, I think that's it. It's just that the more that we can collaborate, I think the better
Agreed.
it is for everyone. So if someone from Climate Action Committee, Energy and Climate Action Committee wants to show up and sit with me on a Friday morning at my compost bin, it doesn't smell unless you open it. That would be great. And I guess I'll communicate mostly through Gary and Harriet and Tom. You're getting some of my emails too now. So
Yes, thank you.
I think that you can keep up with whatever my next one is. My next one is Windmill Weekend. So see if I can bring the compost bin to Windmill Weekend.
We'll be talking about both of
And
those
then-
shortly in meeting.
And then,
We'll be at the farmer's market a week from Friday.
perfect. Yeah, well, I think I volunteered to sit at your table, so.
Yes.
And then after that, then let me just finish that one. With this compost bin, trying to get more traction, another idea was, Hillary says we can't really just leave it at tea time unattended for various health reasons. We can't just keep it there, which is my original idea. But if we could have some kind of rotating schedule, like have it come to Board of Health on Thursday when they have the food there, and then maybe on a Tuesday at the Council on Aging, if this little bin could travel around town to where people are gathering, like one day at the library, one day here, one day there, so that it's available. I don't know what DPW thinks about hauling around a bin, but I can, but it's kind of the future idea that I'm trying to work towards, so.
Great ideas. Well, thank you, Gwen. We appreciate it.
Maybe we give the bin a name.
That's a great idea. Yeah, all right, well,
Put some googly eyes on, like they did for the tea. All right.
thank you for letting me
Thank
move
you.
up on the schedule, and I think I'm gonna have to bail, but let me know if there's anything that comes up that I can
Great.
help with, or
Thanks, Gwyneth. Keep up the good
Thanks,
work.
Gwyneth.
thanks for the
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you, bye.
All right, we're gonna jump to meeting minutes. In your packet was the June meeting minutes. Hopefully you've all gotten a chance to read the great job that John did putting that together. Are there any questions, comments, corrections? Otherwise,
There's Mike.
if not, I'll take a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right. Any other questions?
No, I wasn't at the meeting, so whenever.
You're
that-
allowed to, if you read it, if you can abstain, or if you
Okay.
read it through, you're allowed to vote on it.
I'm allowed to vote on it.
So it's up to you. All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, no abstains, thank you. All right. So, we're gonna talk next about, goals. So interesting time, as you all know, and I think, that, the big, in fact, we're talking about it this morning. We had an interview, with, Laura Parkin from WOMR, at the commission this morning. And Roberta and I were down there with Steve Tupper. Really interesting discussion, and that'll be broadcast on Monday. I think it's at 12:30 or something like that on WOMR. We'll let you know when we hear. The big federal elephant in the room, appeared, and we had talked ahead of time about this to make sure we knew what we wanted to say. And frankly, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think you all have too, because I've heard a lot of people, express dismay over, what's going on at the federal level. But there is hope. There's a lot of interesting things out there. In fact, we're lucky to be in Massachusetts because there's still a lot of mass save rebates and incentives on heat pumps and and whatnot, energy efficiency. I mean, the big hit is in the EV rebates that are going away as of September, very quickly. But on the flip side of it, in fact, I've been listening, and I know John did a listen, and he's gonna have maybe let him have a few words on what he heard from a really interesting climate scientist called Catherine Hayhoe. She is a PhD in physics and atmospheric sciences. And she's also done a lot of work in the area of political science and social psychology on how to reach people. Really fascinating stuff. And a couple of the hard hitting things that I took, because being an engineer, not quite a scientist, but an engineer, it's like, well, the facts are the facts. If you put the facts out for people, it's not shouldn't be controversial. But in fact, people don't really deal with facts that much. A lot of people deal with feelings, and they deal with, unfortunately, politics, and they deal with other things that are buried behind their objection that all make its way into this series of climate denialism that's really a denial of, I don't want this nasty thought in my head that's unresolved about bad things are going to happen. I don't like that. And so I'm going to go find some excuse. So her thought was not to confront them at this point on that discontinuity, because you're not going to get anywhere. But there's a lot of hope, and she gives a lot of examples of this. And John is an expert in this area of reaching out to people in social psychology, right? So I wanted to let you give any thoughts that you have on what you're hearing, and how can we use that in what we're doing next, and how should we incorporate that into our goals for the rest of the year?
Sure. Well, I think in a word, what Dr. Hayhoe is all about is hope, is bringing hope to the whole climate change dialogue and drive for achieving change. And to have that, you've got to really move away from trying to force feed the facts to people, because we've known since the turn of the century that climate change was happening and was a real thing. There isn't much that we don't actually know about it, but people don't respond cognitively, and emotionally don't respond as well when you try to convince them of something directly. What you want to try to do instead is sort of understand their values, and try to achieve some sort of alignment between what is going on in climate change and potential solutions for climate change and the values of the audience that you're trying to reach. So she shared some really interesting facts. In fact, there are some facts that are useful to have, but some interesting findings. And one that struck me that I want to share with you all was that surveys are widely used, of course, to try to understand where people are at, what they know, what they don't know, what their behaviors are, etc. We use the survey for that purpose. And what you find is that if you ask people in a survey context, do you agree or disagree that climate change is a real thing, is a problem? You get large majorities of people responding, yeah, I agree with that. I agree that there is a problem. If you then follow that up and say, do you agree or disagree that you are being affected and are going to be affected by climate change, the number drops sharply. The level of agreement drops off sharply. And it drops off a third time when you ask people if anything can be done about climate change. And that's really where you're getting to the heart of the matter. Behavior can change, be accomplished. So what's going on there is that people are, she uses the term solution averse, meaning that people don't understand perhaps the solutions that are out there, potential solutions, and they're afraid that the solutions are worse than the original problem. And part of the reason why people have trouble sort of getting their way to seeing the solutions is because the media focus on problems and focus on what's negative and make it very hard to see what what could be positive, and importantly, an important concept here is efficacy. And this is something I wanted to share with the committee, because I think it's a key thing that we should be pushing and using as a principle in our own communications. People need to feel like they can do something, like it's possible to have an impact. So it's not just naive positivity, but it's showing people, here are potential solutions to a given aspect of the problem, and here's how they work, and you could do this, you could be part of this. And then the final thing that I would say is that being part of this is key. She offers a 3-step formula for change, which I would like to see us try to kind of routinely in our own communications bring to bear, because it's a nice simple framework. You determine what your audience cares about. What's the values? What is the most value to them? And what keeps them up at night? That's my way of thinking about it. I think it's important. Can you then, as a second step, link that to some aspect of climate change to make that connection between what they care about and what climate change is all about?
Action.
And climate change action, exactly. And then finally, can you find solutions that are consistent and compatible with what they value? And she used a nice example, which I'll just share quickly if I've got another minute. Of this fellow, she's in Texas, she's at Texas Tech, and she was talking to this fellow who was all about promoting fossil fuel industry and continuing to support that, and was on the surface against climate change action, at least as practiced by the previous administration. But she was talking to him at a personal level about what he was worried about, what he cared about. And one of the things he's worried about is his granddaughter playing outside in the increasingly hot Texas summers. And right there, she's got a link between what this guy cares about, what keeps him up at night, and climate change. And she was able to kind of talk to him and help him see some more of those connections, and get to a place where you're talking with people about not what separates you, what makes you different from one another, but what you have in common. And hopefully from there, moving on to talk about practical solutions to that. And the solutions part is tricky, can be tricky, but it's key. And once you get past that harder part of finding some common ground, it becomes easier to find the solutions that people could apply and could achieve more of a sense of efficacy about this. So a little longer summary than maybe I had intended, but I think there are ideas and principles in here that we could apply. I could see us in the WAVE bulletin, for example, on a regular basis, having stories like that one to convey to people how it's possible to be more positive and efficacious about taking action for climate change. That's just one initial idea. I think there's some other things to be done, but and she has a TED Talk. I'll send around information for people, for everybody in the committee if you're interested. Well, whether you're interested or not, I'll send it around and you can choose to read it or not. But she's got a great TED Talk in addition to the podcast that Tom shared with me and that I ended up looking at. So anyway.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, because it's good for us to kind of stop and think in this kind of time, what does it all mean? And I'll just add another piece on that. She said it's probably not worth trying to convince people of the science right now. She said the science has been proven. Right, mid-80s. We all knew what's going on. In fact, as John said, you can trace it back to late 1890s, I think, when an early climate scientist, I didn't call him that at the time, but an atmospheric scientist kind of drew it all out on hand and did as well as some of the latest and greatest computers, supercomputers. But what matters is the solutions, getting to a solution. It kind of reminds me of I'm on a board of advisors for the Dune Shacks, for one of the organizations up there, and we're reviewing the new lease that we finally got after a long time trying to battle and get a new lease. And through the middle of the negotiations, a new directive came down from the park department saying you need to put this wording in here that says you will not engage in any DEI activities. Right, in the doom chat, so what are you talking about? So, but anyway, the director was furious. Well, I don't want to kowtow to the to the Park Service and the Department of the Interior and anything about DEI. And I said, well, does it matter what we call it? I mean, DEI in effect is a new term that was coined just a couple of years ago. State what it is that you want to do. You don't have to say it's DEI. You can say whatever you want. What you're going to be inclusive of all people or welcoming of all people. Don't use the word DEI because that's their trigger point. And kind of the same thing here. You can accomplish the same, what you need to accomplish without battling them in areas where it's the politics that dictate now or to predict which side of the fence people stand in terms of science. Science is old fashioned, I guess. So instead of hitting people over the head with the fear, in fact, Catherine said this, she said, fear is to get you to run away from the bear. It's short term, it's not long lasting, it's not something that's gonna push you to long-term action. Give them hope, give them a positive attribute, tell them how cool this EV is to drive, it's awesome, and you're gonna stick it to the oil and gas industry. And this heat pump, you can be really efficient, you can be much more comfortable in your home, you're not burning fossil fuels in your home, and you can stick it to the electric company if you get solar, right? So, those are values perhaps, depending on who you're talking to, that you can find agreement. So anyway, with that, I will mention that I put in the back of the packet the list of incentives that are getting taken away. But there's also a whole bunch of incentives that are still there from the state, including heat pumps, including EV chargers. So with that, let's jump into the goals discussion, and I will put up. So Mike sent me, first on the list was the transportation, and that's probably one of the most challenging. But one of the things, as I'm trying to pull it up here, that I asked Mike to think about is he's got a ready to go workshop. He called it the EV Touch and Learn, which is still valuable, and it's still got some really good information for people who really want to jump into that. And I had noticed that there's a correlation between when we do an outreach, a workshop or a clinic or whatever, and the amount of email traffic and questions we get back from people. When we go for a long period of time without a public outreach event, things go quiet. The line goes quiet. So I'm thinking, after I kind of realized that, maybe we should be out there a little bit and make sure that we're doing a few things with the community this year.
Did you see my email?
Yes, yes.
So I think we were all saying the same thing, kind of sort of.
Yeah, exactly.
Do something later this year and revise it based on changes to the federal tax credits and all that. I think a lot of people are wondering for both solar and EV and whatever, like what has changed and what if any incentives are still available. So, but I think it'd be great to do something by the end of the year.
Yeah, and perhaps along the lines of what John is suggesting, maybe we need to make it on the positive side. I think people are realizing that a lot of things are going away. We should maybe include that, but also, tell them all the things that they can still benefit themselves, benefit the climate, benefit the environment that they want to protect. So I'm going to share my screen.
I just going back to John, the overview, and I did listen to people and what have you, and don't preach. I think sometimes though, that doesn't preclude providing information, because I think some people maybe perhaps are being impacted by climate change and just don't realize that, because maybe their home hasn't been swept away by the Guadalupe River or what have you. So I think there can be a balance of building awareness. So that's how you build awareness without making people feel guilty. I do that a lot in the plant-based advocacy world, but just continue to share information because there'd just be a lack of awareness. So hopefully we wouldn't leave that on the table.
Sure.
So.
Okay, so I'm Mike talked to me a little bit about his thoughts on transportation, and probably the biggest discussion, can be next month when he returns. But basically what he's looking here is, he's talking about low emissions transportation, which broadens it a little bit instead of just the what he called it before, the zero emissions transportation. He's still hoping to have a working group, kind of a regional effort, which he had before. And he's listed a few people there that have shown interest in the past. And looking at, what are the needs for transportation? And identify the areas for emissions reductions, and then have a educational outreach for each of the stakeholder groups. So a residents workshop, a business workshop, and a municipality workshop. So I don't know what he has in mind on the municipality workshop, but anyway, I think there is certainly interest there. That he had some decent attendance last year. We talked to Gary and I went over and talked to Maureen. What is her last name, Gary? I always forget her last name. Over at the Chamber of Commerce.
Or
Gustafson.
Gustafson.
And she was very interested in holding something there for the businesses. In fact, she even offered up that she could probably get use of Willie's inside space to do the presentations. And that was one of our concerns last time, was just doing it in their little office. So she seemed very interested in doing something there. So, I think there's a lot of possibilities here, and I still think that getting ready for EV visitors is a big deal. So maybe encouraging businesses to get chargers. Eversource is still doing the incentives and almost completely pays for your charger at home for landlords as well as residents. So I think that's still a good opportunity. All right. So with that, any other thoughts on that? Again, food for thought for next time when Mike is here.
Yeah, that's probably better.
Stationary energy. John, do you want to introduce that? I know you and Jack and Mike and Olaf have been working with this area.
Yeah, so this is the goal as we've been working it, and it really breaks down into two lines of activity, two actions. One is focused on heat pumps and trying to get out the word and information to people, particularly in the population who are in the particular situation where they're basically ready to or needing to either update their system with an upgrade from what they already have, or perhaps to use the opportunity to make a switch over to the heat pump based system for heating and cooling. And so we've been working for a while on a so-called how-to guide that's targeting that sort of audience. And I'll provide an update in just a second about how that's been going.
I'm gonna go to the next page. Here,
Well, the other
was talking about some of those items there, right?
What's that? Let's see, is this the update, right? Yeah, okay, great. Yes, good, thanks. Right, so on the guide, Jack has done great work. He's pushed through several different drafts. We've interacted with people on the committee to kind of get feedback and make adjustments. And we've been struggling for a bit to get to something which is detailed enough to be useful and fill in what we see as an important gap in the information that's available to people out there who are in this kind of situation. At the same time, making it accessible, open enough, simple enough that it will be used and will be appealing for somebody to pick up. That's been a little bit of a struggle. We have another version, in fact.
And then, sorry, John, this is all targeted at heat pumps?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just gonna walk this around just so people can see this is the latest version. assuming we want to continue after this meeting, we'll put this officially in and get people's reactions to it, but, we've got it down to a 4-page document at this point, which we think is a good scale to have. And we're focusing not just on getting people detailed information using a simulator tool that's out there, but also on helping curate the considerable amount of information that's available online. Because one of the observations we've made, this is mostly Jack making it, is that there is a fair amount of useful information in there. We found ourselves sometimes kind of reinventing things and recognizing that there was not much value in that. So what we're pivoting towards is more of a curation kind of value that we add. So identifying a handful of sites that can really provide people with what they need. And focus on annotating that curated list well enough that people can say, okay, I'll go to this one to get what I need. So that's the idea behind the most recent version of things. In addition, trying to break it up a little bit more, just doing some formatting things to make it more appealing, user friendly. Jack, what have I missed about that we should let people know?
Well, I think you're mentioning that we're trying to focus on the benefits of heat pumps and avoiding the issue of how much does it cost, since we can't really tell people how much it costs for a lot of reasons. So I think that it kind of emphasizes the positive aspects of heat pumps. And this is what you can do. This is what you contribute along the lines of what you were saying earlier.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. That's a good point. We do include information in there on the cost to operate the different kinds of systems that people have available. But the question about what it's going to cost to acquire and install is, as Jack just indicated, much more complicated and much more subject to change. And we don't want to be giving people numbers that you couldn't validate, or they might not find match what they encounter when they go out into the market. So we're focusing, as Jack indicated, on other aspects of performance and just drawing comparisons across, as it turns out, 5 different system setups. So I'm feeling good about where the guide is at this point. I think if we continue on this track, we can certainly have it ready to go by early fall. But I'll be interested to see what people's reactions are to it.
I guess so. I just looking at this, I think I like it's very plain, plain English and all that. But number one, you get a free home energy assessment. And I just think that's so important, because I'm all for heat pumps and solar, what have you, but I think it takes people of a certain economic status to be able to make, or they may be renters or something. So I think that they get a free home energy assessment. So some really low cost free energy savings, energy use consumption reduction that we can help promote. I feel like that could be its own thing. It's certainly part of this, but we have a brochure or something that folks who have limited means, or they rent or something, that is independent of a financial investment that they may not be able to do, or it's difficult for them to see. So that's just my,
Aren't those home energy assessments free?
right, and that's great. So I think rather than it's in there, but just
Oh, I see what you're
amplify that,
Oh, I
it's
see what you're saying.
its own thing to get information out to people about really low cost and free ways to help them reduce their energy use.
And doesn't the compact already do that? And it seems to me that,
Do they?
yeah, and that's their role, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Provide it
I've never had anything for.
Well, maybe they're not communicating well enough if you don't know that. That's an indication that they're not communicating. I don't know.
So they are asking us to help publicize that. We requested that back in April of the town, it still hasn't gone out yet.
Because I think that's great information, so I don't know where the disconnect is, but the extent that we can help people, if they're not communicating well, maybe we can help raise awareness of the
And
free
that's-
services that are out there, so
The
that's.
compact
why
is
I like
definitely
that.
asking that, so they do run ads on local radio.
Oh, okay, okay.
They send out emails, to their email list.
Okay.
So yes,
I
but
know where the other
we,
page is.
as we all know, it's very hard to reach everybody these days.
Uh-huh,
So yeah, I agree. I think
Right.
that should be something we highlight.
okay.
But you said there's a 4-pager? Yeah.
Yeah, I did, okay.
Thank you.
There we go.
Okay, so it's-
And some of the meet. So, I'd be happy to follow up on and discuss further.
Sure.
What you're thinking about that.
Okay.
So. That's the heat pump guide. The status of that, and I think it's actually in, a couple weeks ago, we were kind of tearing our hair out thinking about how to make it work, but I think it's on a better track now. The other major line of activities for the stationary working group has been on renewable energy recommendations for the town. And really, this should be focused on solar. Tom has really spearheaded the work on the solar inventory. The working group has contributed to that, has made some contributions. I think we need to continue to do more as that progresses, and I've talked to Mike about bringing CVEC to bear for getting us to a state where we've got some viable project proposals, and he's on that.
Good,
So,
good.
I think that should come together. So our actions for the balance of the year are consistent with the summary that I just provided to you all. Keep going on the guide, focus on the solar inventory primarily so that we can make sure that's well coordinated with other things like the decarb roadmap, and mainly that the town is well positioned to get some funding for projects. That's really.
Okay, so can we add, because I think it was a great idea of Harriet's, can we add to that number one, adding something on the energy efficiency assessments, the no cost assessments. I think that's a really good thing to have. And I'm also thinking, we talk about solar, and maybe at this point in time, we should be re-emphasizing community solar, which is a great way to support solar. And there's no cost there, and you get a 10 to 15% reduction on your electric bill right off the bat for doing nothing. But it's a little bit confusing to people, so I think, again, a great way of guiding people into being a little more comfortable taking that step. That it's not a scam, it's real.
Since you mentioned the free energy home assessment again, my follow-up question was your notion that we should have a sort of separate standalone information resource focused solely on that, or just to build out more information within this product on that?
I guess, yeah, and it could be really simple, more of a standalone, just information about free, very low cost ways to reduce energy use and help mitigate climate change. That really, and so, we talk about composting, that's part of that. Certainly anyone could do, but just to help aggregate some of these strategies and things that, more people can do, if not most people can do. So Cape Flight Compact is out there, and I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel for them, but when we're distributing information anyway, maybe it's, it's just an extra piece of paper or whatever. But I just think, just from an equity perspective, just to provide more information for people, whatever their financial needs. And it doesn't have to be a big thing, maybe it's just a flyer to the aggregate, and I can certainly help do that these low cost, no cost services and strategies.
That's a great idea of having a separate fact
It could be
sheet,
a
so to
fact
say.
sheet, it's a
Simple and
1-pager,
low cost.
2-pager.
Yeah, ways.
Yeah, it's not another committee or whatever, it's not a big thing, it's just.
And there's a lot out there. I read something that said, if we eliminated all of the gasoline powered leaf blowers and trimmers, and even lawnmowers, you could, it was some astounding number
It is,
of
it's amazing,
car
it's amazing.
equivalents that
It's
you could get
amazing.
rid of. And in thinking through how we've kind of concentrated on what we've been doing the last couple of years, we kind of hit the big impact items, right? Because there were a lot of good incentives going on. And in looking now at, well, what's next? There's a lot of Massachusetts incentives that can get rid of a lot of
Like
that stuff.
electric, gas.
Yeah.
Grass blower.
Yeah. Which are actually super inefficient and super polluting because of the 2-cycle engine that doesn't have any restrictions.
I like
on it.
that, that's a great, that's
Yeah,
a
it's
great idea.
nasty
Tom.
stuff,
It's a
and
good
they're really
idea.
annoying too, so.
Yeah, yeah, that's good, that's good.
All right.
So then,
Good job.
I don't think there's anything else on
Okay.
this. Yeah.
Good. So some good ideas for the working group to
Yes,
think through.
yes. Olaf will be back soon and Mike will be back in a month, you said?
I think so. He signed up for the farmer's market next week, so I gotta verify that, whether he's back or not.
Okay.
Don't know. Cause we're not gonna zoom in the farmer's market. All right, adaptation. And, do you wanna, the first page is the current. Do you wanna talk to that, or do you just wanna go to the next page, the update?
So Roberta's actually gonna give the
Yeah.
update, now I'm gonna give a presentation.
You wanna start with this first page or go right to the
Why
second?
don't we go to the second
Okay.
page on that, it makes more sense, because it'll just repeat itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yes, assessment of action, yes. Okay, our committee has not really focused on a goal relating to adaptation in the past. And so I think our working group, one of the first things it wanted to do is just to familiarize ourselves with what that term means and what the town may have already accomplished or is working on relating to adaptation, climate change adaptation. So we provided actions that we proposed for the year. And first of all, it was to review the hazard mitigation plan. And knowing that the hazard mitigation plan was going to be revised and the process would begin this year, our hope was to be part of that, and we did communicate with the planning department whether the climate action committee could have a representative on that, and it turned out that that was something that was desired. So another action was to identify who that person would actually be, who would be part of that. So we also, as part of reviewing the plan, made a commitment to try to develop a PowerPoint that would highlight what we see as the hazard mitigation plan as it currently states, and try to glean some information off that, particularly regarding Eastham's vulnerabilities and their needs. The fourth piece was possibly this coming year having some role working with the Conservation Commission, the CONSCOM, and the Planning Department in communicating through some kind of events relating to a potential change and some additions to the Wetlands Protection Act in Eastham. So, and then the fifth then is explore state and federal grant opportunities. So I'll just go through what I feel that we have accomplished and what we may be able to complete by the end of the year. At least relating to the potential sources, we decided that we would like to defer that to 2026 in terms of effort and time. There's a lot of change right now, and it may be clear in 2026 to be able to approach that. Plus, we will also have a climate action plan at that point. As I said, we're providing a summary this evening of what we understand to be the hazard mitigation plan. In terms of communication tools for the coastal resiliency floodplain, I received an update from Karen Strauss, who is the chair of the Conservation Commission last week. She and Paul, they are working on language relating to this overlay to the new, or to the bylaw, the current bylaw, that will affect what is considered I guess the term is coastal resilience zone. That's the proposal, is to create a coastal resilience zone, which will include everything in the floodplain that's currently established by FEMA. Perhaps some additional, some additions from the Department of, DEP, is it DEP? Environmental Protection. And then the third piece is, a potential use of a state model for the years 2050 and potentially 27 in terms of what that model is saying the Eastham flood zone actually could be. So, this is in a nutshell, but anyway, that's the plan to try to move forward, and there is hope to have some kind of educational series relating to this topic at the end of the year, towards, November, October or November.
That the town would do.
Yes, and what they could use our help for is kind of developing those events and promoting those events, and so that is very much still in the works to be determined, and that's something that Karen and the planning committee have to feel more comfortable as to what their proposal is. But that's moving along, so that's where we stand with that. And then finally, that's it in terms of assessment of deliverables. So proposed actions for the balance of the year is, we do plan to have a member of our committee be part of that stakeholder group to be determined, and I think has something to do.
It's you or me.
Yes, exactly. And we, after today, we are having a discussion in this meeting after Eleni's presentation. And what we're trying to do is develop a framework for our committee determining how we're defining adaptation for the town of Eastham. In other words, is it just about the floodplain protection of the land, or do we want to include emergency preparedness? What does it mean? What do we want to make sure is included in that climate action plan, basically? So as a group, we want to feel very comfortable in our definition of what we see as adaptation. What else?
I'm not sure, Shana, do you have your hand up? I wasn't sure if that was just something from earlier.
Whenever Roberta is finished with her update, I just had a question or two.
Yeah. So, yeah. It's really ensuring that our committee feels comfortable with what we're defining here and how we can see this being incorporated into the plan. That's it. Shana, did you have a question regarding that?
Not that specifically. I was wondering about the resiliency or what, like the floodplain bylaw, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Is that a bylaw that is going to be potentially incorporated into the town wetlands protection bylaw? And has another town done that already that we're sort of following?
Yeah. Yes, I'm not very clear on it because I'm not clear on it. My understanding is that we currently have a wetlands protection bylaw.
Yep.
Okay. And what they're attempting to do is not change that bylaw or rewrite it particularly, but to add some things to it. So it's an addition to the bylaw, and it has to go before town meeting. Okay.
Yep. As
I had lamely tried to explain what would be my understanding is to be what would they want to include in that. So it's not a replacement of the current bylaw, it's just some additions, like an overlay.
Okay. So I'm wondering if it makes sense to have, like, I'm not sure exactly how far along that is, but I'm wondering if it makes sense to have like some kind of, not necessarily a joint meeting of the two boards, but maybe like a meeting of a few of the key people on each committee and staff to kind of all get on the same page to help move it forward. And
I would think that would happen. I think they would want that to happen for sure. And I think Paul will definitely be involved in that.
Okay,
and it's part of the message. But I think the goal is to not make this be a surprise to people. It's to
Yeah.
slowly make them understand what the rationale behind it is. And then if the select board decides that it wants to put it on the warrant, then there would definitely be public meetings relating to it as well. The idea of the public, you see what I mean, of the actual article, okay?
yeah, because it will affect a lot of people.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of properties in the flood zone, and if there
Yes.
was a buffer zone to the flood zone, it would
Right.
include people very far from wetlands areas. So yeah, it makes sense.
Exactly, so the public hearings have to take place. That would be
Yeah.
in 2026. The idea behind a more informational session was to familiarize people with the rationale behind some of these possibilities. So that they're not coming into it. You know what I'm saying?
Totally surprised.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, and Jack?
Yeah, just a quick question. Does the plan get into the issue of early warning for potential disasters? I mean, thinking about sort of what happened in Texas, but living in Boat Meadow, if the Bridge Road floods, we're potentially trapped here. And also the idea of trying to get off the Cape, you usually need at least 2 days warning to do that. So is that something that the plan will look at, how the town could establish a 48-hour warning system of potential, storm surges, nor'easters?
So Jack, you're singing my song. This is exactly one of the issues, I think, that the early, we're very early in our process, thinking about mitigation, thinking about adaptation. And I think what you're speaking to, and this is dear to my heart, and I think it's the most important thing really, is emergency preparedness, right? What happens? Will there be early warning? Will there be ways to move people off the Cape and people who are vulnerable, people who can't drive and don't have access to get off the Cape? What are the town's responses to that? Now, my understanding is there is an emergency preparedness committee or something like that. So there's a lot of committees.
Interesting.
And I don't know about, the hazard mitigation. We've got the MVP, the municipal vulnerability plan. I mean, there's all these plans, and it's not clear to us how they intersect, overlap, align, and if there is a strategic plan for execution. It's wonderful to have plans, but in my experience, and I've drafted many plans, they remain on a binder in front, in the office or somewhere in the library, and then they remain there. Worse is now they're on people's hard drives. So you can't even grab the bloody thing. And so.
Hours out.
Especially the powers out. So, it's, I think there's a lot to understand about how these things overlap and intersect, and really what the plan's strategic action plan is, because that really guides what is going to happen. So, but your point is well taken, and we have to figure out if that's us or if it's someone else. I think that there's a lot of layers.
Have you guys had a chance, to talk to the police department, the fire department? Did you say there is a committee, an emergency?
Well, we've heard it was an emergency response committee or something like, do you remember the actual form?
I don't really know about that. It's the public safety officials that are responsible for it. That it is addressed to a degree in the hazard mitigation plan, and once Eleni goes through that, maybe we can open the questions. But
Yeah.
again, as I've tried to state, our hope is that we as a committee feel comfortable as to what we consider the important issues and how we want to define adaptation and whatever we can do to ensure that that's part of the climate action plan.
And just to support your statement, did you know, because I didn't know, that the bridges, the Sagamore and the Bourne, are only rated to 70 miles an hour wind. And if the wind is above 70, which is the lower end of the hurricane scale, everything going off the Cape will be closed.
Yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of issues, and I'm sure that the powers that be, these are the kinds of things you kick the
Yeah.
can down the road budgetarily, year after year after year, decade
Yeah.
after decade. Now, my understanding about the bridges is that there was federal money lined up to actually address the bridges and, bring them up to date.
Well,
But I
they're
don't know
gonna
if
replace it. Yeah.
They're gonna replace it, so
Years ahead
I
of us.
don't- what else can we do, so.
Yeah, no, but it's important to realize in the planning, because that might even extend the 48-hour notice that you were mentioning.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
it's gotta be 48 hours before the wind is expected to get to, if we're getting a hurricane, to 70 miles an hour
Yeah.
sustained. So, man, otherwise people will be sitting on Route 6, just sitting there with the bridge closed. Anyway, so good material, good discussion. All right. And the next is communications, and we've talked a bunch about this, but let's go to the second page again, which is the update. And John,
Yeah, we've talked a good bit about this. Harriet and I have been working on this activity, which is centered on a toolkit, which we've got some initial materials that we pulled together and briefed the committee on a couple of months ago. And since then, we've been heavily focused on the initial, what was called the newsletter, and we're now referring to more shorthandedly as a bulletin, and the title is The Wave. That first edition of that was released not too long ago for the July-August period. And we had some hiccups, bumps of various sorts attributable to use of the MailChimp application, which has certain benefits to it. Going forward, we'll revisit that and see if that's something that can work, because as Tom was indicating earlier, we want to be very careful with how we use the email addresses that we are leveraging, and we want to make sure we really keep the marketing minimal to zero on this. And so we'll revisit the decision to use MailChimp with the next one, but for the first go around, we got out there, we had some initial issues with the links that we fixed fairly quickly. I think, and Harry, feel free to jump in, I think in terms of shifting to this assessment and status, I think that the bulletin format right now is good. I think it's got different sections to it that we can have populated on a sort of standing basis, month to month. The challenge is going to continue to be having that in a form that we can readily, easily update as we move from one issue to the next, and reliably update, so we don't have a lot of headaches with, oh, we can't squeeze it into the box on the template because it's the wrong size, what have you. So Harry and I were talking about that just last week, about how to get there, and I'm confident that will be something, a solvable challenge for the newsletter.
does MailChimp tool let you kind of reuse something previously and update it to new content?
Yes, it does.
Good.
Are you-
Because that's a complicated, doing an HTML email is a very complicated process.
Yeah,
It's there are very few tools that do a kind of WYSIWYG kind of layout.
yeah.
So kudos to both of you for tackling that. That was a tough challenge.
At this point, the MailChimp application is working pretty well for us. It is, we're operating with a free access to it. And that's partly because our end is low, our number is low. We're not sending out thousands of these, we're sending out hundreds. So that's part of the reason why we're able to do what we can with it to this point, so. But we're excited, I'm excited at least, I think we both are excited about the potential going forward. We talked about the next issue, and we've got a couple of ideas for that already in the works, so just need to get it down to, as I said, just to an SOP, a standard operating procedure that will work reliably.
If I could, let me just
Yeah,
do a
please.
quick survey of a very small sample.
Yes.
Did everyone get the copy? Did it go to anyone's junk mail?
I got it.
Yes, for my wife's, it went into her junk mail for some reason.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know how to avoid that, but if that's a odd case out, then maybe it's not an issue.
I'm not sure how to avoid it, except not to avoid it, but online, assuming we can get things set with the landing page. We should have the newsletter there, the bulletin there, say, go,
There you go.
this, you should have received this, et cetera. If you didn't check your spam, something like that would be a solution. The other piece that we've been working on, the third component to our activities, has been the webpage structure. And you talked about that earlier with Shana. We did an overhaul of some of the essentials. There was another wave of changes that were requested that are still pending, and we just need to refresh that. With Shana, that was discussed at the start. So I think some good activities on the toolkit. We do need to kind of get back in there and start working on that again. I think I'm particularly interested in getting at measuring effects, trying to get some sense of what impact we're having with our communications, at least some initial tools in place that will allow us to do that. And I think Harry has some good ideas for how to get to measures of effectiveness, and I think that would really strengthen what we do if we had some go-to tools for that, or some go-to ways to approach that. So I think that's pretty much everything. I mean, summary is there in terms of what we're going to be doing and what the deliverables are. The deliverables aren't really changing. Things are being pushed back a little bit on the toolkit, but otherwise we're on our head of schedule for what to do.
So I'll just throw out one thought, because I did double check this earlier today. The greenhouse gas inventory can be used and should be in case where, there's data we can track on EVs in preparing for the interview today, although we didn't need it. I was looking at changes in the number of EVs in Eastham,
Okay.
and it's almost tripled since 2022.
How many, do you know the absolute number?
I know the number of vehicle miles traveled. I do have that.
Okay,
The mass vehicle inventory doesn't reveal strict number of vehicles for privacy purposes, evidently. But back in 2022, which was our baseline year for the inventory, we only had like 1% vehicle miles traveled were zero emission vehicles. Now it's 3%. Now we've got a long way to go, but that curve is coming up a little bit.
well, especially when so much of your VMP occurs during the summer.
Right.
It's probably like the lion's share, I would imagine, of VMT within Eastham.
Well, and
so.
we don't have a good way to
difficult
measure.
tease out, yeah.
We don't have a good way to
Right,
measure
separate.
visitors, so
Right.
maybe that's a request we can make to the commission as we get into the guts of the climate action plan.
John, the only thing I would add to that is
Yeah.
maybe we're getting a schedule to ask committee members for their input. So ahead of, so X number of weeks, what have you, ahead of the next publication date, so to speak, so. So send us your information, what you would like to be included in the news bulletin. Or some guidelines that'd be helpful, like on the format you talked about, because it can be really apparent when you have a template. So here's a font we're using Arial, I'm making this up, 15, X number, the maximum number of words. 200 words, Arial, size 15, and please send it to us by this date to be included in the next newsletter, so.
Good.
Whatever it is, but.
Okay,
Going to six.
good discussions. Yeah, I know, that's what it looks like. Apologies, we're already at 6, but we got some good stuff coming up, so hazard mitigation plan.
That glare is.
Yeah.
I didn't click the set.
Put it down.
You got a glare?
Yes.
Got glare. Where's the glare?
That window.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yay.
Action 15.
Yes, thank
Little
you.
bit.
Want to compile it.
Sure.
Okay, am I good to go here?
Yes.
All right,
Thank you.
so, I am gonna let it rip, Gary. I'm gonna try to move quickly through this, but I was advised when we did a little dress rehearsal not too quickly, so. This is a product that Roberta and Cheryl and I put together. As Roberta mentioned moments ago, the adaptation work, we just started this. I think we just made our original goals in like March or something. And we had like 2 of them. One of them was to familiarize ourselves with a hazard mitigation plan and distill it down for everybody in this group so we can have an informed conversation about what it is and how we have to think about our participation going forward, when we identify which of the 2 of us or both of us serve as liaisons to the town committee's process. So, I got about 13 slides. I think what I'd like to do is ask you to write down your questions. We are gonna have a discussion afterwards, so that I can just kind of move through it and kind of pack the punch with the message. So next slide, please. Okay, so the hazard mitigation plan we're referring to was developed for 2020 through 2025. It's a 200-page bureaucratic plan that is submitted to FEMA. And the point of it is to highlight the natural disasters and regional hazards that Eastham is likely to experience. And what are the action steps to mitigate loss of life, injury, or property? It's a collaborative process. You can see all the players there: Barnstable County Cooperative Extension Service Grant Program, the Cape Cod Commission, Cape Cod National Seashore, Conservation Recreation, and MassDOT. And the goal of this particular conversation is not to get too deep into it, but to give you an overview, to generally familiarize ourselves with the previous plan. And a little bit of what we learned about the municipal vulnerability plan that was developed in 2019. And that's to kind of begin to kick around some ideas about what we need to do for the plan beginning 2026 to be developed in the fall, 2026 through 2030. Let's go. So we want you to listen to this presentation with these questions in mind. And Jack already mentioned something earlier, referring to adaptation and emergency preparedness and the like. But is there anything missing in what we talk about here that we should be considering for the hazard plan going forward? Okay. What are your questions and concerns for the town going forward? And if the town could only address 2 things, what would they be? All right. And keep in mind that, you know, this is something that we would like to be talking about in the context of the development of our climate action plan going forward and how everything gets integrated. All right. So we want this to be more than just a conversation for today. Next slide. Okay. So as you might imagine, the highest probability hazards in Eastham all refer to water, sea level rise, flooding, nor'easters, coastal erosion and shoreline change, flooding, hurricanes, and the like. So everywhere you see a red arrow here, that's, you know, we can kind of predict that, and that's not a surprise to anybody. What could be a surprise to some people is the risk of wildfire, which it's not exquisitely high, but people, there is a chance within the next 10 years, and the chance is somewhere between 10% and 1,000 and 100%, that we could have a wildfire here on Cape Cod. I don't really understand where that comes from, but I think drought is related to it. And although we don't have water restrictions in this town right now, there are water restrictions in other towns on the Cape, including Dennis and Chatham, and I believe Harwich. I'm not 100% sure about that. So drought is something like, it could be the surprise wild card in all of this. So we have a slide on that in a few moments as well. Okay, next slide. So here are 2 maps prepared by 2 different entities. One is the Cape Cod Commission, which I think is that one. There was a formatting issue up there. And then this one with the hot pink area, you know, heat maps here is the Army Corps of Engineers. These were done around the same time, 2014, 2013. If you put them right on top of each other, you'll see they're entirely consistent, you know, in terms of where the risks are. And it should be no surprise to anyone that water risk resides in the marshes, right? It resides in Nauset Marsh, Boat Meadow Marsh area and North Sunken Meadow. So that's where the risks really are, and you can see there's a pink line down, sort of the entire coast on each side, so those are the concerning areas, and I think that this is probably, given that two entities did this, probably pretty accurate. And remember, this is now more than 10 years ago, so it could be a little bit different now, we don't know. Next slide. Oops. So the good news is that this is a map of the key facilities in Eastham, right? The fire department, the police department, the school, both schools. Oh, there you go. Look at that. Emergency operations, the library, which serves as shelter, and the like. So these areas are not really, these buildings are not really in high risk areas. So if we're gonna need town resources in the event of something, they're gonna be more or less accessible unless we really have some sort of catastrophic event. In which case, who knows, right? But that's the good news. You'll see some orange arrows here. These are all pointing out what's called tributary culverts, right? There's one near the Governor Prince Road, okay, right near Route 6. A culvert is a man-made structure that allows water to flow under a roadway, right? So it helps mitigate flooding on the roadway. And there's one near Boat Meadow Creek and another one in Dire Prince near Rock Harbor. So these are all vulnerable areas, and there's already mitigation activities that have taken place there. The question is, will they hold up in the event of an emergency, or what level of emergency are they graded for? Okay, next slide. And this was just, these were the top vulnerabilities that were highlighted in the hazard mitigation plan. You can see there's quite a few of them. We made some editorial modifications here to identify it sort of order of importance, right? The Rotary and the Bridge Road Bridge are both access points, and both of those areas are considered vulnerable to flooding. So in terms of their where they are in terms of feet above sea level and the like. So those are concerning. The culverts are considered vulnerable as well. And the rest of the items there, again, no surprise, you're looking at Dire Prince, Hemingway Landing, Salt Pond Landing, Rock Harbor. These are all areas that if you look at the slosh, the heat maps that we showed you just a few moments ago, they all kind of make sense. I want to point out the last bullet, which is in terms financially, the vulnerabilities here in Eastham really reside in people's residences. Okay, single family and multi-family dwellings. And I put a slide in the appendix of this document or this PowerPoint so that people can see, depending on the severity of an event, we could be in the billions of dollars. Okay, so from a financial perspective, that's where a lot of the vulnerability lies, but I would suppose that's no surprise to people as well.
And just to point out, it's probably no joke that the bike trail is on there, because evidently the bike trail is an emergency egress route in case Route 6 is blocked.
Very interesting.
And the police have used it. They have a way to get on the bike trail and get down to Willings.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's great. Good to know. Okay, thank you. So here's the drought slide. And what they did here, and I'm forgetting exactly who did this, but this was in 2018. Massachusetts State, whoever did it. It looks official, so I'm gonna take it for official. But if you zoom back out or go back out again, you're gonna see, this is a heat map also, and I'd like to see the whole state. If you
Okay,
want.
sure.
Okay, you can see the greatest risk is actually in the middle of the state, Worcester County, Hampton County, Hampshire County. The lowest risk is in the Northwest. In terms of drought, which I, thought was interesting. And the Cape has sort of moderate risk. It's not nothing, but it's certainly not the highest risk. You can see Middlesex County also up into Essex County, a little bit even higher risk there. But the South Shore and the Cape, fortunately, indicates that extreme drought is only moderate risk, and this was in 2018. So again, I'm not sure how the drought and the wildfire sort of interface. And if this is now different in 2025, it is 7 years later. Okay, next slide. Now, this information, we obviously got it from somewhere. We didn't make this up. It was in the HMP, but we really don't fully understand it. This is the wildfire risk for the town of Eastham. And this is 2012. And what you can see is where it's red, okay, it's extreme risk of wildfire. And again, you see Bow Meadow, you see very, on the border with Wellfleet at the top in the north. And then these shaded orange sections are, they're also considered high, while the red sections are considered extreme. And it doesn't actually make intuitive sense to us that marsh areas that are subject to flooding are also the risk areas for wildfire. So this is questions that we have going into the hazard mitigation planning process. Like, how do we understand this? Because if we ever have to communicate this to town residents or, educational seminars or whatever we might do, we really need to understand this better. But it makes no sense to me that Nauset Marsh is considered high risk.
I can give you a point of contact that might be able to help with that. That's Dave Creary, who's also helping with our climate action plan. He's for many years was the forest management expert for the Cape Cod National Seashore. And he's a forestry guy.
Right. So maybe we can give him a call and
Sure. I'll give you his
contact,
info.
yeah, that'd be great. Okay. All right, next slide. Okay, so in that 200-page document, there's pages and pages of high priority and medium priority action steps. And as I said, its reading is pretty bureaucratic. You can see here what we identified. The town didn't identify this, but we identified what we thought were sort of low effort activities. So continuing participation and maintain a standing in the flood insurance program, the National Flood Insurance Program, and the rating system. Like, that feels like checking the box. That makes sense, and we do. So that's kind of not new business. Same thing about monitoring the town's emergency response services. Generally speaking, we have great town services here. I'm sure they're monitoring the responses and the equipment and things that are needed, okay? So we consider that low effort. But the harder things are the things that either cost money or will require like feasibility studies and things like that. So conducting regular maintenance improvement of dredging Rock Harbor Creek. We know that we do this with the town of Orleans. I think we do that in partnership with them periodically. And then improving the resilience of Route 6 and Bridge Road to flooding. I don't know that anything's happened there. Maybe there's been a feasibility study. I'm remembering that somewhere from our reading. But then what, right? So these things, I think would be considered sort of high effort action steps. And there was no delineation in this review of the plan that indicated, a low effort or moderate effort or high effort action steps. And I think that that's something that maybe we can encourage going forward if there's going to be some strategic thinking about getting some actions done.
If you haven't already, you can also look at the low-lying roads study, which will go into a lot of that. And I've been told that Route 6 being a state road, it's been a bit of a, all right, state, go fix
Right?
it.
It's,
Bridge Road, I
hot
think,
potato.
yeah, Bridge Road has been a high priority, but there's no funding allocated to it yet.
Right, so these are the kinds of things that
Yeah,
we're uncovering as we're doing this process. And, these are natural obstacles to getting things done. You think expense and complications and whose responsibility is it? But whose responsibility was it to warn those kids at the camp and those counselors to get the hell out of the way? Well, they didn't do what they said they were gonna do. So hopefully we can play a role in finding a way through the challenges and making some of these high priority efforts. Remember I said, think of two. to get them over the goal line. Yes. And Roberta did a good job of bringing this forward. So Eastham had a community resilience building workshop in 2019, and they came up with 6 priorities. Of course, the top one is, I think, everybody's, the Route 6 and Bridge Road flooding issue. And then communicating, public education on local emergency preparedness. This is exactly what Jack was speaking to, like, what do we know? And are we ready? So those things are really important. Evaluating upgrades and improvements to shelters and warming stations like the library, possibly the high school, maybe the middle school, not clear. Developing regulations that address the coastal storm flowage system. This is something that I'm not exquisitely familiar with. And what the water system operator, having an MOU with them about how to manage water during storm events. Not exactly sure what that means. Is water not managed during storm events, or is it managed during storm events? And whose responsibility is it? And then lastly, developing a tree trimming program townwide, or an underground utilities program, which I think would be a high cost kind of action step. Okay, I think last slide. So in total, there are 34 action steps in the plan, and they're equally divided between medium and high priority activities, mostly addressing flooding, sea level rise, erosion, and fire as the most prominent. Only 2 actions were low priority. Okay, so everything seems to be important. In terms of effort, as I said, there's no real assessment of what's a high level effort, moderate level effort, or a low level effort. There is some information in the plan that talks about annual review meetings where we can, people can review the plan, any action steps that should have been taking place in the past year. And any kind of debriefing of events that may have taken place. Well, we couldn't find any minutes or annual reviews that indicated that they're happening, so we don't know about that. The MVP, the Municipal Vulnerability Plan, has the 6 key steps, but it's also not clear how that plan and the HMP intersect, or if they just become more things to think about and do, and if it becomes a confusing factor or a strengthening factor. And then finally, in terms of the residential dwellings, there's 750 residential homes, 15% of the homes in the town comprise the greatest financial risk with respect to flooding. And if there was a very serious event, estimates exceed $1 billion. And you can take a look at that on your own appendix.
Estimates exceed $1 billion for a flooding event.
For a very serious
flooding event, wow.
Hazardous event. That's what the plan said.
Wow.
This is not my plan. I'm just trying to tell you what it said and try to distill it down to its essence. So that we can think about this at a high level and then figure out how we want to position ourselves for how we might contribute to, once again, a very large committee process for the 2026-2030 planning process that should begin around September, October. All right, so we're just going to be one voice at a table of a lot of people.
But climate change is happening, we know that.
Yeah.
And that adds perhaps a much more important and pertinent aspect to this, right? So I had written down another quote from Catherine Hayhoe. She said, this is pertinent here: "We have built our cities under the implicit assumption that climate is stable and that conditions we've experienced in the past are replicable and reliable predictors of the future. Today, that assumption is no longer true."
I think you're preaching to the choir.
I know.
It is a great quote.
Yeah,
It is a great
it's
quote.
like, whoa.
Can you just hit one more slide, make
Oh,
sure that I didn't have anything else there? I did, okay. So really, this is where we want to have at least a few minutes of discussion to think about the questions that I posed at the outset. What's missing in this buffet of issues? What are our concerns and questions? And might we prioritize, if anything, you know, 2 action steps that we can make sure if they're the most important things to happen, let's put them on the table and say these are the most important things to happen.
Are you saying to summarize maybe this set of actions or stuff that's missing from that set of actions?
Well, this came up in 2019. Here's a question for this. You know, what's missing? Well, you know, Jack said, well, talk to me about emergency preparedness. I mean, that's what I feel like I get, you know, that sounded like that's what you felt you needed to know. I think that's what I brought up in our committee discussions too. And then there was a question about, wait, is that our lane? Is it not our lane? Whose lane is it? Does it matter if it's our lane? Maybe we should insert maybe we should change lanes. You know?
I would say a lot of this is very institutional, and that's fine, because certainly institutions as far as emergency preparedness and what have you. But maybe a focus on, you know, what individuals can do first, like if there's an emergency preparedness plan. I haven't seen it, maybe it's there with the town of Eastham, like. If you hear the whistle, if you hear the siren, here's what you're gonna do, you know, or you're gonna get a text, a 911 text, and you need to go. So something like that, awareness if that does exist, if such a plan does exist within the town of, in the various departments, or as a regional thing. But anyway, what that is, what the emergency plan is, just to be aware of it. And then also how within your, if you a homeowner, what have you, how you can reduce, you know, such as fire. Because I tell you, last November, it was dry and it was windy, and I lived in Berkeley, and I've lived in places that are susceptible to fire, and I was very nervous last November.
Yeah.
And you have pine trees and you have grass, so, you know, what are some ways that people can like mitigate their own personal risk? You know, what to grow or not to grow near your home. You don't want to grow this because it's really flammable.
Or what they could do to their home to protect.
Right, their home, and
Yes.
then do and don't plant this or that, because it's, you know, don't plant this because it's really flammable. So things like that, so certainly I'm all for, here's what you do when you hear that whistle or you get that text. And then the town doing a much better, I'll say better job, that sounds pejorative, but being judgmental, but that. I totally, and then information on near-term things that people can reduce their own risk. So that would be my two thoughts.
I like that. I like particularly that second one. What can individuals do? Huh?
Well, picking up on Tom's observation, 2019, that was a while ago. Is there anywhere, just simple, here's what's different now in the landscape, literally and figuratively, from what the situation was?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, we didn't go digging for a lot more information, like we had to synthesize 200 pages of stuff. And so we didn't go on the hunt for more information. Shana, if you're still on the call, I don't know if you have any information as to if any of the action steps outlined in this previous plan, if there's been any progress made on any of these.
I'm here. I would say that there's been progress on some of them. Like there's definitely a tree trimming program. The land subject to coastal storm flowage goes back to what Roberta was just speaking about earlier. So that's developing those regulations and bylaws, and the county put together a model for different towns to adopt. So that one's kind of been, it's ongoing, but it's been, you know, it's being addressed. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question, some of them have been addressed or are being addressed, and others have not. Like improving resilience of Route 6, I believe the state is looking at that. We definitely don't have any control over it. We could try to have influence, but Bridge Road, we've applied for funding to get some of these low-lying roads addressed after we put that plan together. And we were not able to get funding through 2 requests for grant funds. So we have to relook at the funding for that.
Is there, do you know, like, where these activities are monitored? In other words, are there minutes to meetings that are accessible for us to look at or anything like that?
In terms of keeping track of implementation of these different various plans, it's now sort of falling under the strategic planning committee to synthesize all the plans in town. This is just a plan that happened
Right.
to not be updated since the strategic plan. So this one will then fall under the strategic plan. And then a couple of those major recommendations with which, if the committee wants to recommend improving resiliency for the Route 6 and Bridge Road and some like public education or what have you, getting two major recommendations in the strategic plan will help to get that funding. But so it would be the strategic planning committee that would kind of keep track of all these different plans and how they're implemented.
But in essence, the strategic planning committee can't really report on the hazard mitigation plan annually. Like you say, I think they're very high level and few goals that are really pushed through. For
Right.
example, resilience of Ridge Road could be a high one, right?
Right.
Or doing something about the coastal resilience is another high one. And then everything else in that plan, I don't know who reviews that, and that's the question
Yeah, so
mark.
as Paul mentioned to me, when things get completed, he'll then go to whoever's responsible for that plan and ask them, do you want to include another, your next highest level recommendation in the strategic plan? As far as who's responsible for this plan, well, I mean, it was Paul that initiated like getting the plan written, but then
Right.
various departments are responsible, like fire and police and conservation and DPW, and so it's all different departments.
Right. But we're not quite sure whether that's really evaluated annually, or is there a process for that?
No, at this point, not for this plan.
Yeah.
So let's pivot back, if you don't mind, just to any other concerns that people around the table or on the line are feeling like, geez, we should pay attention to this in this next iteration of the plan.
I'm thinking in the emergency preparedness section.
Yeah. Right.
To points made around the table, not only what should we do if something happens, but how do we know what to do ahead of time, especially if cell service is out, power is out? What is the town doing in terms of shelters? They must be there somewhere. But we had trouble with in the decarb roadmap. There were a bunch of questions in there. What's the shelter? How long does it have to survive without power? Where is it getting its water? And recently, a couple years ago, the town, the police department, the generator failed. They have no backup evidently at the time, and so they had no emergency communication going on at that point once that happened during a particular storm. So have we thought through all of that resiliency side of what happens in the type of emergency situation we could have today?
I think, I mean, I would tend to agree with you, Tom, that, if there is plans, they're not well communicated, because if we don't know, chances are a lot of people don't know. So I think that that's one thing that in some ways could be low hanging fruit, because I have to say, I'm very impressed with our town services as a general rule. At least, I haven't really seen us in distress. But I have a lot of confidence in the town's ability to pay attention to what's important. I think the challenge is also communicating to people, many of whom are part-timers, right? Might not be here, but Hurricane Sandy came in the summer. It was, that can happen. So, yeah, okay, so that's one thing. Other things that people are concerned about.
From what you've heard
Yeah,
in this PowerPoint in terms of what's included in the plan or what's not.
Well, gee, I can't help emphasizing with Jack. I mean, early warning system, might be absolutely valuable, and essential.
And you see that as different as the
Yes.
different early warning.
It's different
Yeah.
from, say, for example, the phone call or the text you get
Yeah,
tells you that,
something more than an email in the middle of the night, telling.
yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
that something's gonna hit you.
Almost like we have to have it
Well-
ready to go so that when we
Mhm.
know a storm could happen in 5 days from
Yeah.
now,
Except.
we don't have to
it's
sit
an
around for
amateur-
3 days to try to figure out what we should tell people. It's already ready to go.
So we can get ready for it, yeah.
Well, since it hasn't actually happened, we don't know whether they have setups for that, but it is a question. That is a question. Is it gonna happen? Do we have it?
Yeah, do we have it?
Yes, and the public needs to know that, yes.
But you know, I learned, and I think we all did something important about the terrible crisis that happened in Texas. And what would have changed if they had an early warning system that notified people that this was happening or about to happen? I think it's essential that we have something like that.
Yeah.
And you
Well,
know,
we surely have that with hurricanes, where states and governors start communicating very quickly about storms. And I guess we have it in Massachusetts as well.
Well, I think we might. I'm not sure, where the Cape resides in the, I've never. How do people think about the Cape? Oh, it's sort of out there. I think we have considerable vulnerability and we're not Boston, and Boston has vulnerability too, and there's a lot more people there. So, if I'm Governor Healy, I'm like, Bostonians, get out of town, I mean, we've seen the Oakley Courthouse. I mean, the waves coming over the walkways there have just been incredible, right? So, I worry that we could get lost. The Cape people. I mean, if it's summer, probably not.
It does happen. I remember, was it 12 years ago, Hurricane Irene was predicted and it looked bad. And there was evacuation of people who did not live here on the Cape. How that was conducted, I don't know, but the word got out is you have to leave. And I think hotels had to have people go.
Mm.
Do you remember that?
yeah, yeah,
Yes. So that's certainly advanced planning.
yeah,
And fortunately, it wasn't bad, but it could have been bad. And what are you gonna do with these thousands
Right, yeah.
and thousands of people here?
And I've mentioned this before during was it Clearwater, Florida, the West Coast hurricane recently, where there was a lot of flooding and people lost a lot on one of those islands. They went and interviewed people afterwards. They said, why didn't you leave? Because you were told, you could lose your life. And they said, we had nowhere to go. We had no way to get
there.
Yeah. Jack has his hand up.
Yeah, I wonder if it's important to distinguish between storm surge flooding that is somewhat predictable because the storm is coming versus the kind of flash flooding associated with a major thunderstorm that just sort of props up overnight. And I think those are different things. And my concern was more about the extreme weather events that are predictable and making sure, we don't watch the daily weather forecast every day. Just making sure that there's enough advance warning. So if you do want to stock up on provisions or leave the Cape, you have at least 48 hours, maybe ideally even 72 hours to know that this is coming. That's what I was thinking about.
Thanks, Jack. All right, so we've got to wrap up this meeting.
Yeah.
We're way past. What I'm going to suggest for the solar inventory, we'll call a separate meeting on that with the stationary energy working group. You can all see what's in there. There's a reference on what this is about on that page. So you can decide whether you want to participate in that. And I'm going to suggest that at that meeting, we'll decide whether it's ready to move forward to provide to the town. Given that it is not a specific recommendation to go do solar here, it's more a inventory of things. Yeah, I don't think we have to necessarily vote to approve it. If y'all are okay with that, that's what I would suggest.
Tom, I would suggest at some point, that maybe in the next meeting, it's a very brief overview of what your conclusions are, because it isn't altogether apparent from reading it.
what,
Sure,
if there
Yeah.
are recommendations there.
Yeah.
and-
And I'll just say what I redid the ratings, based on recommendations from our last discussion, which is to give a weighting into the forested versus non-forested areas. So that is in there, and I put in a lot of the inputs that Shana gave me and that Karen Strauss gave me in terms of conservation areas or future conservation areas, things that are considered to be almost treated like open space or conservation that are not currently in the Eastham database. So all that has been wrapped in there. It comes down to a very small set of parcels, frankly. And I think the North Well is still a possibility, but perhaps the sand pit just south of Brewster Sand and Gravel might be an excellent location. Because there's no trees there. So anyway, you can take a look at that, and the one other thing I want to ask about though is we have a request to put out pamphlets. We have the workshop coming up. So a couple quick items at the top here. The rest of this you can read, but we're looking for volunteers to post flyers around town, and the list of places to put it is here. If I get a couple volunteers, that would be wonderful. Thanks, Roberta. Anyone else to help?
I am putting out flyers for the Chamber of Commerce
Oh, fantastic.
upcoming golf tournament in September. I'm putting some, I've already done many, I've done about 25.
Oh, wonderful.
But I'd be happy to put,
That'd be great.
Tommy, if you wanna just tell me where you want me to put them?
Right there.
Up, but
Okay, I know, but if we're both doing it, we wanna,
Okay. Well, if you can handle that, that's awesome. I'll give you the flyers.
so, yeah, I mean, I
So
can do
just
all
that
those.
list. And then you can read through the other things that the commission is doing. I was on there, they've already made requests for the town to the stuff on 2. On 3, we got flyers. Like to send out an email blast. If you're all okay with that, I will do that. I have graphics from the commission, and then I can do some postings on community pages. All right, and you can see the other things that the commission is doing. If you have other ideas that might be missing, let me know, and Roberta and I know.
What about Facebook?
So the commission said they could not post on Facebook, but that's in our column under 3C Facebook post.
Oh, it is, okay.
And actually, the town of Eastham Facebook page under 2B, I see there, so that is up there. Okay. Also farmer's market coming up a week from Friday, so John, I think you're taking the first shift with Gwyneth and maybe Mike if he's in. And then Harriet and Gary, you're taking the second shift on that, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Windmill weekend, we need to talk in August, so start thinking about that. I'm gonna need volunteers, 2 shifts, and then ideas on handouts and flyers that we might want to give out at that meeting. All right, so with that, any motion to adjourn, please.
No move.
Second,
Second.
before you go, we need to vote so we don't lose quorum. All in
Thank you,
favor?
everybody.
Night.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you. Sorry for such a late meeting. We got a lot of discussion going, so I apologize for going so late.